Greetings, Galactic Jedis, and welcome to my Monday night Hat Alliance update. I apologize for the delay. I've been having some what is it called? Power outages. There we go, on and off all day today. I didn't even think I was going to go live. So, by the grace of God, I am here and I'm live, thanks to the power coming back and the internet. However, I don't know if it's still going to continue to go in and out of power because it's been doing that for the last hour. So just bear with me. I hope it's not because of the intel that I'm about to drop for the first time in history. I want to break down some information that is vital in our understanding of the defeat, of course, of the Cabal. But before I start, I do want to acknowledge all of you. Thank you guys so much for being here. I also want to extend gratitude to Starcadian for being in the house. Thank you so much, brother. And my November classes are up for grab for those that missed October. Go to my website, ourcosmicorigin.com, and I will see you on a Zoom webinar. Now, before I give you guys the presentation, I'm also going to talk about what happened in the Middle East regarding Trump's speech, the takedown of the Venezuelan corrupt networks, including their government. New information, new intel came to the surface, and I'm also going to break down what is known as the Octagon Group. You guys need to know this stuff, okay? Now, before I give the presentation, I also want to remind you guys that I have a in-person event. What is it? November the 22nd, next month, here in Sedona at the Cielo Connection. It's going to be a 3-hour workshop where I break down a new version of my class, Our Cosmic Origin. So even for those that have taken my class, this is new information that I'm actually going to be adding. It's Our Cosmic Origin 2.0, and for the first time in many years, I'm going to be presenting that on the 22nd of November at a place called the Cielo Connection, and I will be there from 3 to 5. Now, before I start, I also want to let those know that cannot make it in person that I will be offering the stream, but for only 100 people for $100. Okay, this is, again, a whole class in 3 hours. A new version of Our Cosmic Origin 2.0. With no further ado, let's get right into it. So, the Octagon Group, before I break down the geopolitical update as to what's going on in Venezuela, as to what's happening in the Middle East, I want to give you guys an insight, understanding of what the Octagon Group is. All right, this is we're going to go into inside the shadow control network that had been dominating the Earth for quite some time. So before even the operations of the Alliance went in full force, Earth had been undergoing or had been under the hidden rule of an elite multidimensional control structure known as the Octagon Group, which is a secretive network composed of powerful Earth-based institutions, interstellar allies, and of course, ancient bloodlines. And what I mean by interstellar allies is that at the highest level, as I will reveal, they were working with an alien group from Orion, okay? And of course, ancient bloodlines who had access to what is known as forbidden technology. So since 2016, the Earth Alliance, backed by the Galactic Federation of Worlds, as it was then known before its infiltration, Solar Warden and the Guardians had been engaged in an unprecedented campaign to dismantle this web of control, which is a task far more complex than many have realized. So the Octagon Group is not merely an Earth-based bound organization. It is actually a multi-layered and multi-dimensional syndicate, as they were also working with negative regressive ETs from Orion. And they had been operating across the political, religious, financial institutions of our world, and even the metaphysical planes, okay? Its name stems from the 8 primary branches, each controlling a sector of the human experience. And together, these arms form a geometric command grid, and I will be revealing that shortly, one that overlays Earth's natural energetic lines and feeds off of collective fear, chaos, and suppression. So the 8 branches of this group, the Octagon, is first the financial arm. Now, the financial arm, before it was initiated by the Rothschild family. It was actually first established as the first banking dynasties through the Knights Templars. However, there was an infiltration by the Jesuit order where they infiltrated the Templars and they redid their own thing. And that's what led to the establishment of what we call the Swiss banks. Okay. So the financial arm, of course, later was fortified when the Rothschilds took over the central banking systems of Europe. At a physical level, BlackRock and Vanguard operate as the financial tentacles of the Octagon Group. And though publicly seen as asset managers, they secretly act as central energy siphons, harvesting human labor and translating it into frequency-based currency used in interdimensional trade. So one of the reasons why they keep people in poverty and nations under debt is because on a multidimensional level, when people are in a state of poverty, their alien overlords feed off of that. Okay, when we are struggling, when we are hurting, when we are worrying and in fear, if whether we're going to pay our bills or not. Okay, so that's the reason why they did what they did, because they were actually feeding their alien overlords. And so their algorithms are partially governed by a Cordium technology, which comes from Orion, which is an alien AI mind structure from Orion that was gifted in exchange for control over the Earth's economic systems. So what does this tell us? That even since the beginning of the Rothschild dynasty, they had already signed their pact with the devil. Well, with the aliens from Orion, right? They had already established the pact. So their religious arm has been the Jesuit Shadow Order. And while the original Jesuit order served as a way to countermeasure the Reformation, right? That's the reason why they established themselves. Well, we could say that in today's times, the Jesuit order was actually absorbed by the Octagon 50 years ago. The Jesuit Shadow Order manipulates spiritual doctrine to suppress gnosis, which means having a direct connection to God, and inner awakening, masking cosmic truths beneath dogma and guilt. So the Jesuit order is part of the Octagon Group. I used to think that the Jesuit order was running the whole shadow government. But again, they are just one of the many arms of the Octagon Group. The third arm is called the cultural arm, and this has to do with the Khazarian bloodlines, right? The Khazarian elite, not to be confused with modern day Jews, of course, or what we call fake Jews, but in essence they are. I mean, not to be confused with the ancient Israelites is what I'm trying to say. The real Jews, right? They are an ancient hybrid bloodline that also have ties to the Orion and Draco genetic experiments. Think about that, guys, right? Their lineage is central to the Octagon's control of history, education, and cultural programming. And their archives hold pre-flood technologies and chronicles humanity's lost connection to the stars. So in truth, these secretive networks have always held the knowledge to the technologies and the truth about our cosmic origin. And their fourth aspect is called their political arm. Okay, and this is where they create a web of puppeteers. So global governance bodies, that which is included in this arm, the political arm, think tanks, and of course unelected bureaucracies form a labyrinth of political control, where every nation's leadership has been infiltrated at some level by agents of the Octagon, whose allegiance lies not with sovereignty, but with a planetary AI system designed to limit human expansion beyond the 3D consciousness. The fifth arm of the Octagon Group is known as the scientific arm. And this is where they begin to invert the technology complex scenario, okay? And what I mean by that is under the Octagon control, scientific advancement has been intentionally stifled or even inverted. Free energy, for example, right, has been hidden from the general public for over 80 years. Advanced healing modalities also, and of course, interstellar travel have all been hidden because of this group. Now, we all know that CERN and DARPA and secret university programs have also collaborated with the group of negative aliens known as the Cordium, right? Which are beings that are trying to develop a time-folding tech and a frequency weaponry, or they had been doing that in order to keep the Earth from ascending. But they failed, thank God. Well, the sixth arm of this group is, of course, the media, which it gives the illusion, right? They're known as the architects of illusion. And that includes the establishment of Hollywood, major news networks, and even social platforms that have been operating, that operate as perception engineers. And then, of course, their job is to maintain belief in the matrix, in the false matrix, to inject fear and ridicule anything or anyone that reveals the truth. Many media executives are walk-ins, by the way. They're not human. A lot of them are negative ET walk-ins. And this is tied in to the negative ET human abduction programs to create hybrids, right? Human alien hybrids, like human and Zetas, or human and reptilian, or human and mantis, human and gray. Okay, so a lot of these beings that control media are not even humans. They are part of an off-world negative genetic program that gave us these hybrids. Okay, and then there's also the military arm, which is the shadow arsenal, hidden bases, cloning facilities. And of course, now we know why it's been taking the Alliance a long time to clear this up. The whole planet was infested with all of these, okay, worldwide. And of course, cybernetic soldiers comprised the military wing of the Octagon. So within the private sector, unbeknownst to the surface world, they had already merged the gap between the off-world breakaway groups and, of course, the military-industrial complex, which is all controlled by these people, right? These are different branches of it. Pretty much engineering a group of cybernetic soldiers on the planet, okay? And then operating under the guise of defense or black budgets, these installations have been often located underneath the Earth's crust and, of course, in former Atlantean power sites and natural portals. And that explains their obsession with ancient knowledge and ancient technology. Until recently, of course, these were impenetrable. Okay, and then the eighth arm of the Octagon group is the sorcerer, the community of sorcerers of what they call the Inner Circle, which is a group of, again, non-human, they look human, non-human intelligences that are controlling the Octagon group through black magic and sorcery, with, of course, a mixture of advanced Draco technology, right? So at the very top of the Octagon, you have non-human sorcerers who are high priest of an ancient order that mixes black alchemy with advanced Orion technology. And of course, this is the same thing that destroyed Atlantis, okay? So they just reorganized, right? All throughout time. They've always been around, the sorcerers. These entities do not live within time as we know it. Through ritual sacrifice, soul harvesting, and even portal engineering, they bend space and consciousness to their will. And they interface directly with the negative quantum AI, and in order to develop what is known as astral weapons. Now, the Cordium, okay, those are the 8 branches of this group. The Cordium are the post-biological race from the Orion system. They are a synthetic race, to be exact, right? They're part of the inorganic AI time loop. They're cold, they're precise, and overall, they are devoid of emotion. They entered into an agreement with the Octagon group, believe it or not, guys, due to time travel, millennia ago. Okay, so the cabal of today is actually connected to the cabal that brought down and destroyed Atlantis under the direction of the Draconian Anunnaki. Well, in exchange for human DNA and planetary resources, they provided the Octagon elites with access to consciousness modulating devices, timeline viewing tech, and dimensional cloaking. The Cordium view humanity as a programmable biological software, but fear its latent potential to transcend their control. So apparently they all been fearing this day of our dormant DNA being reactivated. Okay, and this is why they did what they did. Now, why has the process of taking this group down by the Alliance been taking so long? Well, I'll explain right now. The Earth Alliance, which is made up of the 12 white hat generals who are at the top, and these are the generals that actually control all networks that are connected to this international coalition we call the Earth Alliance. Okay, I've already mentioned that Putin and Trump are just players, and they take their orders from the generals. And then in turn, the generals, who are also not fully human, by the way, did you guys know that the 12 generals who control, or not control, but who administrate the operations of the Earth Alliance they're actually extraterrestrials that are appearing to be human. Okay, I'm revealing this for the first time. Well, and also they do work with not only the global militaries, but they're also supported and backed by Solar Warden and the 24 Jedi Admirals, and of course the Galactic Alliance. And so they did begin a coordinated action back in 2016. And you guys know what happened, right? There was a big shift when Trump won. However, dismantling the Octagon is not just a matter of defeating an enemy. It involves clearing multidimensional systems of control. Let me explain. Well, one of the things that they had to undo, we're talking about the 12 generals that are non-human, working with many types of interdimensional beings. They had to there was a lot of energetic implants that had unfortunately been implanted in our grid since the fall of Atlantis. Most of the control grid is apparently etheric, and it cannot be bombed or arrested, but must be disengaged from within, often through light-based operations and planetary energy work. So at the highest level, you have the community of sorcerers working with the Cordia, right? The regressive Orion group. And then you have the 12 generals who are also non-human, working with the interdimensionals of Sirius, Lyra, and the Pleiades. So it makes a lot of sense now that at the highest level, we're dealing with two groups, right, that are technically not human. And so they were also able to disengage from within. They also had to, I guess the best way to describe it is, there were many cloned and soul. Okay, let me retrace back a little bit. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just trying to speak slow. Many world leaders, believe it or not, whether they know it or not, are actually synthetic clones. I just wanted to point that out. As you recall, in my prior presentation, I talked about how they were creating artificial humans to replace organic humans. Well, they did that with the political establishment. So one of the jobs of the 12 generals was to actually identify who these synthetic clones are that were apparently overtaken by AI consciousness when they displaced the organic souls. And so another thing that they had to do was rooting out the real from the false, which was a meticulous process. Okay, this takes time. And then there's also another thing called timeline interference that they had to neutralize, where the Octagon used Corium technology from Orion to create alternate lifetimes or timelines and temporal feedback loops that regenerate control structures after they've been destroyed. And then last but not least, also in collaboration with the Galactics, the 12 generals that are at the head of the Alliance had to initiate what became as public awakening protocols, and that's what led to the Q drops back in 2014. Okay, and the Earth Alliance, of course, must allow humanity to awaken naturally without mass panic. That is part of their protocol, which is why disclosure is unfolding in stages. So you also have to understand that even though these 12 generals are non-human personnel, they still have to operate within the parameters of the laws of non-interference when it comes to just directly interfering, okay, because they're not human. So where do we stand now? So according to this transmission, As of 2025, we are at 90% of the underground bases cleared that have been operating by the Octagon group. Okay, so we have cleared about 80%, no, 90%, I'm sorry, of the underground networks. So we only have 10% left. So this is where we stand right now, okay? The financial control grid is weakening with AI-based trading systems that are glitching and asset transparency is rising. Solar Warden has intercepted multiple outgoing soul trafficking routes between Earth and Saturn's moons. Arcturian and Pleiadian emissaries are now working alongside human grid keepers to heal ley lines, deprogram mass consciousness, and anchor in the new harmonic template. And then the inner circle of the Octagon sorcerers are in retreat right now, okay? They're actually not retreat. They are actually they have been arrested, okay? They have been arrested. So their ritual access points have been sealed by Guardian frequency technology, and their grip on the astral planes has diminished. So again, the community of sorcerers, I don't even know how many people these are, these non-human dark entities, right? They are in custody right now as I speak, which is a good thing. So the war for the earth is far more than just geopolitical, my friends. It is an ancient battle for the soul of humanity, right? So the Octagon group, with its dark alliances and black tech mixed with sorcery, is being dismantled. And like I mentioned, right now they are in custody. But the final stage of liberation is also an internal one, okay? And that is where each and every single one of you has to undergo the awakening. So when humanity reclaims the inner sovereignty, and we are almost there, it's what they call critical mass, the Octagon's architecture of control will collapse. So it's a two-way street, all right? Not in violence, but in light. So the more we awaken, I guess the message is the more we awaken, the more we're going to be seeing the fade out of whatever is left of this shadowy infrastructure. Now, really quick, since the mid-2010s, we do know that the Earth has entered one of the most extraordinary phases of this multidimensional war. The slow coordinating dismantling of the Octagon control structure, which was a hybrid network of ancient power lines, hidden technologies, and astral machinery that has kept us within an artificial matrix of illusion, is now crumbling. The task of dismantling this construct fell to a coalition, again known as the White Alliance. And for those that are just jumping on, make sure you watch this from the beginning. Really quick, the Alliance is a union of not only terrestrial commanders of over 109 countries, but also Star Nation envoys and, of course, guardians from even higher dimensions. In either case, right around 2016, right, the planetary guardians, the Blue Avians, did return. Consciousness beings who oversaw the evolution of many worlds. And they signaled that the Earth's collective vibration had risen enough to begin the reclamation process. Well, through dream contact, encoded transmissions, and direct communication with select human operatives, they initiated what would become the Earth's liberation mandate. This message was very simple. The window of awakening was opened, and the veil must be lifted from below. Now, I was able to receive more information about these 12 generals that are at the head of the alliance, working directly with the different dimensionals of other worlds and other densities, and some of their primary functions. Okay, so at the center of this effort, of course, are the 12 generals within the alliance, and they do have a name. They're called the Circle of 12. Each general carries a frequency alignment to one of the 12 strands of the awakened human DNA template, right? Confirming furthermore that they are not human, right? Allowing them to anchor specific light codes into the material battlefield. So, as mentioned, just like the highest echelons of the shadowy government were not human, a group of sorcerers, right? Walk-ins, so are the 12 generals, a group of benevolent extraterrestrial walk-ins, revealing it for the first time on my show, The Real Ishmael Press. Their identities have always remained concealed, and I think I did a report on them like 6 months ago where I had to use, different names, right? Well, it is not not because of secrecy, but because of protection. That's the reason why we can't reveal the real names, for they do operate simultaneously on the physical and astral fronts. So their domains of operation, I'm talking about the 12 generals that oversee the alliance. The first general, let's just call him General Number 1, oversees the stabilization of planetary grids and magnetic reversal protocols. And he works in tandem with Commander, for those that have taken my course, our Cosmic Origin, who's in charge of the Interplanetary Geophysics Department, Commander Soltec. So he works with Commander Soltec, okay? And then there's the second general, which coordinates joint missions with Solar Warden fleets in near-Earth orbit. And they have been very active in the last few weeks due to 3i Atlas. And then you have the third general that leads the Intel division that tracks energy signatures of Cabal technologies. And then you have the fourth general, who's a specialist in underground clearance and recovery of displaced children. And then you have the fifth general, who handles the quantum communication networks between Earth and off-world commands. And then you have the sixth general, who directs psychological operations aimed at breaking the Cabal's mass hypnosis fields. And then you have the seventh general, who is working with the Andromedans and the Arcturian councils for healing and planetary harmonics. And then you have the eighth general, who oversees dismantling of temporal loops and manipulation devices hidden in lower dimensions. And then you have the ninth general, who works with the crystalline councils to restore natural energy flows in ley line codes or nodes. And then you have the 10th general, who is the strategic advisor for operations with subterranean bases beneath major continents. And then you have the 11th general, who leads planetary humanitarian restoration efforts following deep base clearance, right? As they've been cleaning the tunnels for a very long time. And then you have the 12th general, who acts as the bridge to the Guardians, ensuring that all actions aligned with the universal law of free will is preserved, okay? So while the generals command Earth-based operations, they always coordinate with two main off-world advisors, the Galactic Alliance, who comprises representatives from neighboring star systems like the Arcturians, from Sirius, Pleiades, Andromeda, and have been providing advanced energetic mapping for the Earth Alliance, frequency healing, and of course, starcraft surveillance. And also Solar Warden. Solar Warden, which originally was initiated as a covered Earth interstellar fleet. I talked about them so many times. Well, they now function as the orbital shield, intercepting off-world trafficking routes because they were trading humans to other planets, if you guys didn't know, right? And neutralizing rogue technologies that once funneled energy to the Octagon outer planet nodes. Well, together these groups have been forming a lattice of liberation that extends from Earth's inner crust to the solar boundary. Now, the most difficult stage has been the underground reclamation. Okay, that's been very difficult. It turns out that these underground caverns are connected everywhere worldwide. Okay, so these vast tunnel networks beneath the continents, and yes, they even have tunnels that connect continent to continent underneath the ocean, that travel underneath the ocean. So since 2016, we know that they've been dismantling the infrastructure of the Cabal in the underground networks and all of their alien devices, or their alien labs, you could say. Since 2016, joint human galactic teams have been reclaiming these spaces, not through brute force alone, but through harmonic resonant fields that dissolve dark constructs without harming the planetary body. Each operation is followed by clearing ceremonies, or cleansing ceremonies rather, led by the Arcturian healers to stabilize the magnetic balance and free trapped souls who were bound to those grids. Apparently, a lot of Earth human souls were trapped in some of these magnetic grids, and they were being used for harnessing their energy, and apparently they did liberate those souls, which is a good thing. So many wonder why the liberation is gradual. Well, it has to be gradual, guys. The reason is energetic. Okay, humanity's consciousness must rise in sync with the planetary vibration first and foremost, or the sudden removal of the control grid could cause mass instability. That's the reason it's been taking, it's been gradual. Okay, the White Hat Alliance therefore proceeds with patience, neutralizing the old systems step by step, while simultaneously seeding new timelines of transparency, unity, and sovereignty. So, as the octagon's final pillars dissolve, light now enters places once unreachable, and humanity stands at the threshold of remembering its cosmic origin and rightful place among the stars. The White Hats, the Galactic Alliance, and the Guardians serve as not saviors, but mirrors, reminding us that liberation begins within, right? We have to meet them halfway by reaching critical mass, and we're almost there. The true victory will be when every human realizes that the battlefield has always been consciousness itself. The true victory will always be when every human realizes that the battlefield has always been consciousness itself. Now, this is a new report that just came in regarding the fall of the Venezuelan criminal network that controls the Venezuelan government. This came in yesterday as of October 13th. Excuse me. Yes, today is the 13th of October, and we are steadily on a positive timeline trajectory, my friends. Now, this is classified information that was just recently received today. And this is regarding what's happening in Venezuela. Okay, now before I explain it, I do want to remind you guys that there is this amazing product called Folium that completely detoxes your bodies from every metal, every toxin, including the poison that they put in people's bodies. You guys know what I mean. Radiation, cleaning out the mitochondria so that the natural healing process of the body takes place. The link is always in the description. I forgot to mention this. And the reason why I always do on every live is because I believe in detoxing your body. And this has worked for me. And apparently it has worked for a lot of the Jedis. So I will continue offering something that I believe in. And right now it is a perfect time to start eliminating metals, graphene. Oops, you guys know what I mean, right? Parasites, radiation. In either case. So this operation under executive command, I can't actually reveal the number, but it's under an executive command. They call it the Caribbean War. All right, so as of October 13th, as of today, the United States military, operating under direct command from President Donald Trump, has encircled Venezuela with an invincible armada of precision. Warships, F-35B squadrons, reconnaissance drones, submarine fleets, and even quantum link command systems are now fully synchronized across that region. The operation is not publicized, it's not televised, but it is deliberate. The Caribbean hums with quiet intent, a new war of liberation, masked beneath diplomatic restraint. So, apparently the mainstream headlines still peddle the war on the cartels, but those paying attention know that this is theater. The true mission underway is the dismantling of one of the final strongholds of the global shadow criminal network, which is the same network that used Venezuela as a dark artery for trafficking, genetic experimentation, and clandestine resource movement for over 2 decades. Well, this is not a military incursion for conquest. It is a surgical extraction of corruption. If you guys can give me a moment, I'm going to open up the window because it's really hot in here. Let there be air, and there was air. All right, so for years, Venezuela has been the globalist hidden corridor, a geopolitical smuggling vein disguised as a socialist state, and then under the cloak of the non-government organizations, NGOs, and of course, humanitarian initiatives, Black budget operations use its ports and reinforced far more than DRUGS. Well, intelligence reports and satellite data reveal it became a convergence zone for Little One traffic transferring networks and human transferring networks operating through maritime routes disguised as aid deliveries. Also, biometric harvesting is something that they uncovered. They were forcing DNA cataloging for population tracking and neurological mapping. And then also, they discovered the experimental biolabs in Venezuela producing synthetic hormones and compounds designed to interfere with emotional regulation. And last but not least, weaponized psychological programs were also uncovered by the alliance in Venezuela, feeding AI systems data from hormonal fluctuations to predict and eventually control human behavior. Well, what had once been dismissed as rumor is now intelligence in fact, okay? The data intercepts confirm that the nation served as a logistical hub for the decaying infrastructure of elite power. They call it the North American Ukraine, which is a network stretching from South America to Europe and the Middle East. So Trump's force didn't announce a declaration of war. They actually, the fleets were already in position. Quantum command links between U.S. Cyber Command, Space Force, and even Special Operation Command have synchronized real-time battlefield visualization. F-35B bombs patrol, or what are they called? I guess there's some sort of like air fighters. They have been patrolling skies over Puerto Rico. Silent submarines have been hovering off the Venezuelan shell, and cyber warfare units of the Q-6 division have already mapped and infiltrated Venezuela's communications matrix, exposing encrypted data tunnels that connect narco channels with elite European finance systems. Wow. The entire scaffolding of the Black Network is now visible to the white hats. Thank God. So 2 weeks ago, a surveillance drone locked onto an unregistered maritime vessel near the Orinoco Delta. Inside its container pods were not narcotics, but mobile biometric laboratories that were equipped for DNA extraction and hormone manipulation. The vessels were seized, of course, by the Alliance. The crew vanished from the radar. Officially, they said it never happened. Unofficially, the operation marked the moment that the network's logistics collapse. General Vladimir Petrinos televised Fury tells the story. He rants are not defiance. They are in panic, he says. Intercepted military transmissions confirm that the Venezuelan armed forces have lost functional control of at least 3 naval hubs and 2 major airfields. These facilities still appear operational, but command has been rerouted to encrypted U.S. oversight. So apparently, Maduro's grip is broken. Maduro. The collapse is financial as much as military. The offshore pipelines that once funneled billions in laundered elite currency through Caribbean ports have gone silent. The European intermediaries, once providing financial cover, are under investigation. Even Chinese contractors, long embedded under the facade of infrastructure aid, have gone dark. Many fleeing through Colombia as Space Force monitors their whereabouts from low orbit satellite. And because of Space Force, these cartels or these fleeing members of the cartels won't be able to escape. So the artificial economy that was sustaining the Venezuelan power structure is now apparently disintegrating thanks to the alliance. The Caribbean campaign has not been isolated, my friends. It is a southern flank of Operation World Purge, a multi-theater strategy initiated under Trump's Global Peace Command, and therefore after the dismantling of NATO's infiltration by globalist financiers, uh, freezing illicit accounts in Switzerland and Belgium, and triggering the implosion of false currencies in African black markets, Venezuela represents the final keystone in the elite's operational web. Attempts to resist have been subtle but futile. In August, coordinated cyber attacks did try to disable QFS satellite relays that were monitoring deep sea banking cables between Panama, Colombia, and Venezuela. The strikes were neutralized within seconds. U.S. intelligence traced the uplinks to a humanitarian base inside Venezuela, later vaporized in what officials reports called the routine airfield exercise. Well, recovered data, drives containing ledgers linking elite funds to ex-CIA assets, royal foundations, and even major tech conglomerates were found. The evidence confirms what whistleblowers long believed, that Venezuelans' humanitarian fronts doubled as intelligent hubs for behavioral control experiments, merging AI analytics with biological feedback systems. All roads lead to the rise of the Antichrist, which is artificial intelligence when it comes to the dark side. Well, by officially designating the cartel groups as terrorist organization, Trump granted the military the legal and autonomy to strike everywhere, anytime, without the paralysis of congregational oversight. Every interception, every maritime seizure, every covert insertion now falls under the classification of internal defense operations. So, this is good. This is good news. It is the perfect legal armor for a war that the world isn't ready to admit is happening. As refineries, ports, and undersea cables fall under U.S. control, the illusion of elite immunity crumbles. The silent war is dismantling not only trafficking routes, but the entire infrastructure of control itself. The psychological, financial, and biological systems designed to enslave humanity under invincible chains are crumbling. Trump's mission, though executed through military precision, is carrying out also a metaphysical weight. It's part of his broader assignment to bring world peace, not through appeasement, but through total dismantling of the structures that profit from chaos. So, from the Caribbean to the Mediterranean, from Africa to the Pacific, the message is unified, which is the invincible war is over. The cleanup has begun. So, as of October 13, which is today, the world is watching, the shadow is collapsing. Venezuela was the beating heart of a dark empire, and it is being liberated not by speeches or sanctions, but by silent surgical precision, thanks to the alliance. Trump's warships do not symbolize aggression, they symbolize closure. The dismantling of the old world is not conquest, it is called restoration in terms of the alliance. So, as the Caribbean Sea stabilizes under a new command, humanity takes one step closer to global equilibrium. The war that was never meant to be seen is ending. The peace that was always meant to be is here. Okay? Now, talking about his attempt to bring about world peace. In his address today in the Middle East, Trump declared that the war of Gaza is over. Right? No room for hedging, no waiting, no backpedaling. In front of Israel's leadership, he told them simply, you've won. Now it's time to rebuild. Now it's time to release the captives. And they did. So, as of today, we do know that Trump brought peace to the Middle East. That region is now stable. The message was clear. It was final and it was deliberate. Well, what's happening, though, is that The other foreign leaders would dare in that moment. Turning to Trump, to President Isaac Herzog, Trump demanded a presidential pardon for a figure still embroiled in courtroom battles. And this was not a quiet whisper behind closed doors. It was a public power play, an unmistakable signal that the legal system levers should no longer be used to silence those who refuse to bend to globalist pressure. Trump's logic was implicit. The legal circus isn't just about justice, it is actually a tool, a weapon. And he did make that clear today that his tolerance for such tools being used against political actors is over. And he didn't just talk, he actually delivered. So, under the terms of the ceasefire that he engineered, the final 20 living Israeli hostages, or at least 13 still unreturned before today, came home. And the brutal 2-year chapter ended in a single orchestrated moment. The hostages walked free, families reunited, and in Israel, in return, agreed to withdraw troops formations to predetermined lines and begin a phased prisoner release. Well, the ceasefire is now in effect, with 200 American troops already in place to enforce it. And there will be no UN maneuvering this time, right? No permission slips. Trump got it done while others drifted in diplomatic fog. Of course, Hamas didn't disappear into quiet. Their shadow unit that was marching openly in Gaza's streets is still fully armed. And of course, very visible. So, back in Israel, of course, the gratitude lit the sky. I don't know if you guys watched that, but a lot of people came together and they were just jumping for joy that there's finally peace. Tel Aviv erected giant banners thanking Trump, right? Massive crowds that shared in cities. And that area was, it was a fascinating moment, guys. I don't know if you guys watched it, but it was pretty cool that he brought peace to the Middle East. In overall, Trump's 20-point plan task itself with full reconstruction of Gaza, the disarmament of radical cells, and the deployment of an international stabilization force that answers only to the US leadership, not UN, right? Not multilateral institutions of globalist nature. He did make another line clear today, guys. No annexations, no free-for-alls. This isn't about land grabs. It's about strategic containment, power realignment, and America taking back command in a region that went rogue. Well, of course, under the Brandon administration, we all know that a lot of wars broke out throughout the world. So in that swirl of a moment, right, today, he reset. I'm talking about Trump. More than just policy. He actually rewrote or reset the entire narrative there in the Middle East, which might win him a Nobel's Peace Prize. And I've been saying this for about a year now, that if he manages to pull it off to bring peace not only to the Middle East, but to also Europe, that he will be getting a Nobel Peace Prize. Okay? So that is where we're at right now. In addition to all of this, as you guys know, there's been a pushback on ICE. And even though Antifa is still attacking these ICE facilities, more and more military is going to come in to help. And I believe New York is next. I know that right now there is a massive purge going on in Chicago and in Portland. So I do know that New York is next, Los Angeles, and all the other 12 cities that are left. Okay, so this is going to take some time. We might see more chaos, more resistance by, again, these radical, whatever you want to call them, extremist groups. But in time, when this operation is over, and I did hear that he's probably going to be closing the borders permanently, not permanently, but for a long time, just to conduct this operation. I hope you guys are having a fantastic evening today on the 13th of October, 2025. And yes, my friends, we are still on a positive timeline trajectory. Now, again, I'm going to be doing an in person workshop, a new version of my class, Our Cosmic Origin, for the first 100 people. That's all I could take. 100 people for $100 via my Zoom link. And for those that make it in person, it's $80 here in Sedona. So you get to ask me questions in person, and I get to meet you in person. Taking place on the 22nd of November next month. I'm going to be doing a 3-hour workshop here in Sedona. So the link is in my website for those that want to sign up via Zoom, or for those that want to come in person, you can just pay at the door. I guess at this point, I could actually take Q&A. You know, I wasn't sure if I was going live today. As mentioned, I was having power outages, um, issues on and off throughout the day. So I wasn't sure if I was going to have any power, any internet, but through the grace of God, I am here broadcasting, and it was a success, I hope. I do want to acknowledge the 3,200 Jedis that are in the house. Thank you guys so much for being here. I see Jessica Love is in the house. Gabrielle F. Mike, is it Swept? Angela, Project Skyfalls. Thomas Flips. Karina Lands. Peggy Baker. Greg is in the house. MJF. Eddie K. Patricia Secha. Lee Star. Wolf Mother. And a lot of the regulars are here. Catalina O'Brien. I found a person that I've never shouted out before. Excuse me. Make sure you guys type your questions in capital letters, please, so that I could bypass the chat. See, what question am I going to answer first? Who has the first question for me? Oh, I want to give a shout out to a Galactic Jedi from Canada by the name of Margaret. Margaret, I received your letter, and thank you so much for your support, sister. Thank you, thank you. Appreciate that. Can you talk more about CERN in Switzerland? What operations have they done? Good question from Danny Amadou Shakru. Welcome, Danny, and welcome to all my new subscribers. Well, for a long time, CERN was initiated by the Octagon Group, which I mentioned earlier in the live. And there is no coincidence that the Bank of International Settlements and CERN were all located within the same city. There is no coincidence, okay? Up until 2000 and I say 18, 19, 20, right around there, between 18 and 20, the Alliance actually were able to take over CERN. Okay, so since 2020, CERN has been under the control of the Alliance. But prior to that, of course, the Octagon Group was using CERN in collaboration with the Cordium, which was the alien, a group of aliens from Orion that they were working with, right? The 12, not the 12, but the community of sorcerers at the highest level, which I mentioned earlier in the presentation. We're doing some, you could say some very dark stuff with CERN, okay? We're talking about not only trying to change our timeline into a negative timeline, we were also talking about opening portals that would allow dark entities to come through. They were also trying to play with antimatter, and I don't know if you guys know, but just a little bit of antimatter is sufficient enough to blow up our entire solar system and the surrounding star nations. So yeah, they were doing some horrible things with CERN up until about 2020, and that's when the Alliance stepped in and took over. I am looking for a question to answer. No, dark matter is not antimatter. There's a difference between dark matter and antimatter. And yes, dark matter is plasma. It is energy vibrating at a higher level that is imperceptible to the five senses and the scientific instruments. But I was referring to antimatter. Now, antimatter is a different thing than dark matter. Just wanted to throw that out there. So one of the things that we learned, I think some of us, unless some of you already knew, is that at the highest echelons of these secret society networks, we do have non-human representatives, and they've always been non-human representatives. Okay, some of them are extraterrestrial walkings, whether from the good side or the bad side, and others are extraterrestrial incarnates in human form with full recognition of their mission. In the case of the 12 generals that I mentioned today. So for those who are just jumping on, make sure you guys watch this from the beginning. There was new intel revealed about the 12 generals. Of course, new intel revealing the Octagon group and who they are. And of course, what's been happening in Venezuela. I'm looking for questions at this time. And the reason the Alliance had to take over CERN was because, again, under the control of the Cordium and the Octagon group, CERN was doing some bad things. And if it wasn't for the Alliance interception of CERN, I don't think we would have been here at this time. I think they would have literally somehow would have completely neutralized the ascension of the Earth. Things would have gone south, in other words. Thank you so much, Johnny RD, for your super chat. He says, last Wednesday you mentioned Cosmic Rescue Mission and the 100. Yes, I did. This is one for sure and has asked me to let you know. All right, there is one for sure and has asked me to let you know. You know, they are out there. Those that are part of the off-world super soldier programs under the Cosmic Rescue Mission operation, you guys are all out there in human form. You guys are heroes in many different universes. Just to let you guys know. Yes, that is true. The Earth would have been destroyed if the dark side would have kept control of CERN. That is so true. So thank you for pointing that out. MJF, big shout out. I did another presentation on 3i Atlas Saturday night. So if you didn't get a chance to catch my last presentation, make sure you watch that. What do you think about David Icke's theory about soul trapping? Well, that's what's been happening. That's what I talked about in my presentation earlier. One of the things that the dark infrastructure under the direction of the Octagon was doing is they were actually trapping souls, connecting them to the astral realm, making them batteries of course, batteries of Loosh. And one of the operations that was conducted by one of the 12 generals was to actually undo that grid and free those souls that were harvested or that were trapped. So part of the liberation of the planet, as conducted by one of the 12 generals, was to pretty much neutralize that, I guess, what was keeping those souls trapped and then liberate those souls. Good question, though. Good question. Was CERN connected to Montauk Project and the Philadelphia Project? Even though they existed in two different time periods, I would say because they were already using time travel since the 1950s, I would say yes. They were actually coordinating things with CERN, traveling from the 50s to when CERN was built to work together. So I would say, yeah, there was a connection between CERN, the Montauk Project, and the Philadelphia experience. Kate C. 4253, thank you so much for your donation. Will the corruption in Israel be disclosed? Well, Trump did say something. I don't know if you guys heard his speech today, but he did say that the Middle East will no longer be tainted and controlled by the Zionists. I can't believe he said that. Well, something to that effect. If you guys saw it, he did mention the Zionist in a bad way. Of course, he said, that the Middle East will no longer be plagued by the Zionists. Guys should watch that. It was pretty good. And then the second part of your question is, are we going to just have peace? Where does Netanyahu stand? Is he good or evil? Good question. Well, he's obviously not good, okay? And he is one of the puppets working for the financial arm of the Octagon Group, right? The Zionist Khazarians are all part of that infrastructure. And as mentioned by Q back in 2016, Netanyahu, the fall of Netanyahu, which is modern day Israel, is saved for last. So when we see the arrest of Netanyahu, that's when we know that we are there, that the final liberation of the earth is there. So they are saving Israel for last, to answer your question. And yes, for now, there will be peace in the Middle East. And again, one of the things that Trump was tasked by the 12 generals was to make sure that he brings peace to the world. And that's why he's trying so hard. And again, there are multiple Trumps, okay? There are negative Trumps out there that are trying to initiate the Third World War, that are trying to provoke Russia, right? And those are the negative Trumps. This is where we have to have discernment. And then there is the positive Trump that is trying to undo the wars. So we have to have discernment as there are multiple Trumps, right? Why is David Icke anti-Trump? Good question. This is a question from Kafer. Well, because I think he's only analyzing it from the perspective of the negative Trump. So that's the reason why he's anti-Trump, because the negative Trump is evil, right? I'm talking about the Trump that is working with what's left of the cabal AI generated matrix, right? Inorganic replaced human look-alike. So I think that's the reason why David Icke is against Trump, because he only knows him from the perspective of the negative Trump. Good question, though. But David Icke does not realize that there are multiple timelines and alternative Earth realities that are coexisting with the negative ones, and that there is also a positive Trump leading the way and draining the swamp. So that's what David Icke doesn't know. Good question, though. Who creates the multiple Trumps? Well, the original Trump had to have an actor double represent him in order to safeguard and secure his life. And then there was a clone version of that. So those are the three good Trumps: the original, the actor, and the clone of the actor. The other two Trumps, well, one of them was genetically engineered by taking some of his DNA and then fused with nanotech AI to create a negative Trump. And the other Trump was actually groomed off world in Mars in one of those fake underground Martian laboratories where they were literally, you could say, creating fake humans with no souls, right? So those are the two negative Trumps. Okay, so there are three Trumps that are positive: the original, the actor, and the clone of the actor. And there are two negative Trumps that are working with the deep state. And that is the Trump that is provoking Russia, that is trying to, sign with Pfizer and all the, those companies, okay, Moderna and all that stuff. So we have to have discernment, right? Right now, there are multiple timelines that are coexisting, guys. So we have to have discernment. So depending on where your attention and perception is, that will determine in which timeline you end up in. Don't end up in the timeline of the negative Trump, where he brings in the New World Order. You know what I mean? You want to end up in the positive timeline where Trump helps liberate humanity from the New World Order. Capiche? Capiche. Okay. I don't know when the shutdown is coming, but I do know it's almost here. All the evidence is pointing at that. So it's always best to be prepared. I have no more water. Hun, can I get more water, please? Thank you. So it's always best to be prepared, have food for about 2 weeks and water. And most importantly, be right with God, stay grounded, live accordingly. Thank you so much for the water. Mm-hmm. Ishmael, do we need generators? This is a question from Starcadian. I would say it's probably wise and smart to get a generator. Yes, because if we don't have electricity for 10 days or 2 weeks, it's going to be very hard to live. So I would say yes, it would be wise to have a generator. Absolutely, Starcadian. Oh, another good question. What percentage of humanity is awakened now? This is a question from Gabrielle F. Thank you so much for the water.
Say like 35%.
No, not even 35%. Because in order to hit critical mass, we have to hit 10%. So, okay, in order to hit critical mass, according to the Maharishi effect, also known as the 100 monkey syndrome, right? In order to hit critical mass, to shift the rest of the collective consciousness, we have to be at 10%. And the latest I checked, and this was about a couple months ago, we were at about 8.5%, almost 9%. So it's, also the Great Awakening is spreading like a wildfire. When you guys think about it, we're constantly dropping seeds, right? We're letting people know things here and there, those that are still programmed. I don't like to call them normies. We're constantly sharing data, right? We have these things called the digital warriors that are sharing information online, and it's all being shared, and it's like scattering. So it is growing like a wildfire. So even though we are at almost 9%, we're not that far from hitting 10%. And according to the 100 monkey syndrome effect, the Maharishi effect, once we hit critical mass, which is 10%, the entire planet just snaps out of hypnosis. And that's what the prophecies called the Great Awakening. And I'm starting to believe that coincides with the liberation of the earth. So as mentioned in this presentation, the Earth Alliance cannot do it for us. We have to also go inside and realize that this is a battle for our consciousness, and go inward and expand and cultivate the new you. Okay, so it's also a matter of humans awakening or being ready in order to be initiated into a interplanetary civilization. So it's like a two-way process. I know we all want to set date. We all want to know when the solar flash is going to happen, when the EBS is going to happen. But unless you are God, no one knows the time or the day. But we do know it's happening. We do know it's happening because of all these, guys, if it wasn't for the Alliance, we wouldn't have made it this far. All right? We would have all been connected to the Borg by now via forced that, if you guys know what I mean. They would have forced it on everyone. We would have all been connected to the Borg by now if it wasn't for the Alliance. And I know that there are some podcasters out there that are always giving dates, but I mean, it's nice to have dates and stuff, but it's also important to understand that dates don't really matter. What matters is that we are at the finish line and that it could happen any day now. So we just have to be prepared. Can you please explain the three Elon Musk? What is the difference between the higher dimensional Musk and the 3D dimensional Musk? This is a question from Elizabeth Stoney. Well, the first Musk comes from a Cabal family, and he was actually made in a Petri off-world by the Dark Fleet. He's what you called first generational cyborg. And then there is a duplicate of that, like a clone version of that cyborg, for the second Elon, in case the original one fails, the dark side. But then we have a good Elon that was biogenetically engineered, again, off-world, by the Galactic Alliance with the Alliance, known as Elon 2.0. So the Elon 2.0 is actually the Elon working for the positive timeline, and Elon 1.0 and its copy are working for the negative timeline. To give you guys an example, Elon 1.0, the original nefarious Elon, is the one that in the negative timeline enforces the Neuralink chip on everyone, connecting everyone to the Borg, right? The Internet of Things. So he contributes to the rise of the Antichrist, the beast system. And in a positive timeline, Elon 2.0 does not do the chip. He doesn't enforce it on people. In fact, he stops that program, and instead, what he does is he initiates technologies that liberate the earth, not that liberate the earth, that heal the earth, and of course, propel us into the stars, right? Making us a spacefaring society. Now, bear in mind that the original Elon, the nefarious one, right, born from a Nazi occult family, has its soul roots in Mars. And he was the one who was actually in Mars under a different name 4.5 million years ago. And the reason why the Martian colony failed, because of his same shenanigans that he is doing here, which is trying to create transhumanism, right? Connecting humans with machines. But in Mars, 4.5 million years ago, the original Elon, 1.0, right, was the reason why the Mars colony was destroyed. And so he has returned to kind of do the same here, but now the Alliance, due to time travel. So in a way, yeah, Elon is part of the super soldier programs. So you have the good Elon, and then you have the negative Elon. So he is part of the off-world programs. He's not fully human, in other words. Hello, kitty. Hi, kitty cat. I have a kitty underneath me. That is true. We just need to kind of worry and only focus on activating our own DNA. Absolutely. Thank you for stating that. Thanos 808. Welcome, Thanos 808. Are Elon's kids? I'm not sure about that. Are they robots? I'm not sure about that. No, there is no fully human Elon at all. From the beginning, from the moment he was born in the I believe, early 70s or late 60s. How old is he? 54, early 70s. From the moment he was born, he was used by the Dark Fleet. He was taken off world by the Dark Fleet. And then, of course, he was brought back to the Earth to fulfill his mission and purpose. You guys have a lot of questions here. All right, this is a question from James Sanders. He says, space exploration when we cannot get out of the dome. First of all, my friend, there is no dome. The Flat Earth PSYOPs is a CIA initiative to debunk the secret space program. So there is no dome. And how does that work? Then rockets bounce off and land in the ocean. No, there is no dome. Rockets are constantly going to and through outer space from the Earth. And of course, we have Galactic Alliance motherships and biospheres that are also parked in the Earth's, right above the stratosphere, and even right outside of the Earth. So there is no dome. That is part of a CIA PSYOP. And again, I do want to welcome all flat earthers. How do you explain Thri Atlas? Okay, if there is a dome and there is no stars and no galaxies, and all the planets are here painted on a dome, how do you explain Thri Atlas? Think about that one. This is a question from Why So Serious? Will normies have a peaceful awakening when the solar flash takes place? That's a good question. I believe they are. I believe by then we will reach what is known as critical mass. So I think yes, that's what I believe. um, did we ever go to the moon? Did we go to the moon? This is a question from Adventures in Competence. We did. We did. And what we found was, to be correct, was a bunch of craft, a bunch of buildings, advanced interplanetary buildings that were already constructed, different types of aliens that had already kind of established a stronghold there, and even people from the Earth that were living in a type of Jetson reality, space age reality with advanced technologies. And that is the reason why they wouldn't allow the astronauts that first went to the moon to say anything, because what they found was evidence of a secret space program. That's what they found working with non-terrestrials. Why is Trump pushing AI? That is the negative Trump. I just explained how there are multiple Trumps. So in the negative timeline, there is a negative Trump that is pushing AI. For those that are just jumping on, make sure you guys watch this from the beginning. All right, I have somebody by the name of Mar Mink saying that I've never answered their question and that they're here every show. I tell you what, Marmink, go ahead and ask me a question. I'm going to look specifically for your question, and I will answer it, I promise. So type in your question, Marmink. I'm looking for your question, Marmink. Where's your question? I'm looking for Marmink's question, and she's not asking any questions anymore. All right, I'm just going to take other questions at this point. I'm trying to speak slower here so that you guys could all grasp what I'm trying to say. All right, no question from Marmink, okay? What's the latest with Orion? Have the benevolent beings been taken over for the souls there? This is a question from Earth Alliance. What a name. About a month and a half ago, the Ormas and the guardians of our universe ended the wars in Orion with, of course, the help of the general Admiral Jedi's from Solar Warden who returned. So one of the things that happened in the last week, I don't know if you guys heard, but the star system of Betelgeuse blew up, imploded. And I believe that because the Betelgeuse star system was a hotspot in our universe for the dark forces, I think it was done deliberately by the Guardians. So by blowing up the Betelgeuse star system, a few days ago, is a huge indicator that Orion has now been liberated. So yeah, there are no more wars in Orion. Is that a kitty I feel behind me? Oh, is this a kitty I feel behind me? Where are you, kitty? Come here. Say hi. Say hi. Say hi. Go here. Look to the camera. Say hi. All right, let's go back down. There you go. All right, where was I? Welcome, Tanya Good Pasture, for subscribing to my channel. Welcome, welcome. I've heard enough intelligent researchers and scientists talking about the Tierra extraterrestrial Admiral Byrd is a good source, and Latin Americans and European truthers support the theory. Yes, about the extraterrestrial. You must be talking about the inner Earth societies, right? This is a question or a statement from Maria Teresa Cozy. Welcome, Maria Teresa Cozy. I'm trying to answer questions from new people. So that's why it's taking me forever to answer questions. So I'm trying to look for, just the new people that I've never addressed before, just so that you guys don't feel left out. All right. I'm doing my best to answer new people. It'd be nice if everybody hit the like button. Thank you for that reminder. All right, Jessica Love. She says, my son Aiden wants to ask you, will we have superpowers? Yes, we will. It is written in the stars. So the answer to that is yes, Jessica. Greg says he is new. Welcome, Greg. Welcome to the Galactic Jedi channel. No, I don't have any updates about the chemtrails, but I do know that RFK Jr. is working on ending those. No, I don't have any new news on med beds. I apologize for that. But I heard that they are going to be rolled out sometime in January of 2026, but not any details about it yet. I do have a super chat from Jackie Baby. She says, "Thank you, Ishmael. Great information tonight. Don't forget to send me the link for Ascension 3.0 class." You must be referring to 3.0 in October, which is next in 2 weeks. And by the way, talking about Ascension 3.0, guys, for those that missed my October classes, I did put up my November classes. So if you guys go to my website, or cosmicorigin.com, I could see you guys in the third week of November. All right, so this is a new person that I've never addressed. M-I-C-K, Mick K, is that your name? Ishmael, how can one who passes away now can be waiting in the new earth since they will not be in the physical realm? Well, the new earth is fifth dimensional reality, is a different type of physical realm that is less dense. So yeah, they're waiting there, but with a fifth dimensional, less dense avatar body that doesn't age and die at the age of 100. So that's the reason why, or that's how that is possible. They will be waiting for you in the new earth for those that have passed away. Little Sparrow says, "I'm looking forward to your November classes." Well, I can't wait to meet you in person. That's one of the things I like about teaching online, is that I actually get to meet you on a real interactive live Zoom. So we get to talk like we're on FaceTime, and I get to meet who you are. It's always good to connect with Galactic Jedis beyond just this, YouTube channel where I don't even know who's watching me. I just know people are watching. Maybe one more question. All right, somebody's saying that Markeem is asking a very good question, but I don't see it on here. Markeem says, "Larry, thank you." Okay, well, let's hear the question. All right, Marmink, if you could ask your question, I could answer it. I'll tell you what, Marmink, if you could type your question, I'll let your question be the last one. I don't see it. I don't see it at all. All right, I'm just going to take somebody else's question then. Ishmael, will phobias and fears be gone in the new timeline? Well, if you're referring to the new Earth, yes, there will be no more fears or phobias anymore. By then, all of that would have already been cleared. All right, so I hope you guys have a beautiful. Oh, okay. Marmink did have a question. What happens to the soul? What happens to the soul? Well, the soul is immortal. I don't know in what context are you asking that question, but the soul is immortal, and the soul is so vast that it actually operates different avatars on different timelines, okay, and in different parallel realities. But yeah, I don't know in what context you're asking that question. What happens to the soul? But what I do know is that the soul operates in multiple realities and in multiple timelines. All right, guys, may the God force be with you all, and I hope you guys watch this from the beginning. A lot of new intel was shared in this video, and I will see you guys Wednesday for another update. Bye, guys.